Thanks, everyone. I'd like to say a special welcome to all the extra guests joining us today. You're welcome to join us anytime, and we're pleased to have you with us. And Marva.
I'll just unmute. Hello everyone. It is my great pleasure to introduce our special guest and to interview her today for Rotary. As a young child, Shakiba and her family came to Canada as refugees from Iran and settled in Guelph. With her mom modeling community engagement, she became an avid volunteer in a wide range of events and activities. Her educational path includes graduating from the University of Guelph in 2010 with an honors BA in criminal justice and public policy, followed by a postgraduate certificate in international development from Humber College. During her studies, Shakiba worked with international development agencies such as World Vision Canada and Free the Children. She also spent time delivering federal social service programs at Service Canada, and she connected Northern Canadian high school students with a Canadian nonprofit called Dreamcatcher Mentoring. Inspired by her international and national opportunities, Shakiba returned home to Guelph to work in the field of community development at United Way as their Director of Community Investment. During this time, Shakiba successfully monitored and met pressing needs to build community capacity. I am really pleased, fellow Rotarians and guests, for you to join me in welcoming Shakiba Shayna, President and CEO of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to be interviewing Shakiba. I know applause. We can do hands. There, hands piece there, Shakiba, for you. And we will have questions afterwards from the audience. And so if you could make a note and write them down. You could also access the chat function at the bottom of your screen. If you feel like it, you can just type in your questions as you go along. And those questions can be read. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can use either the hand reaction at the bottom of the screen, or you can put your hand up, and Carolyn will find you through support from Krista and Justin. They both will be helping to monitor things today technically. So let me get started with the first question for Shakiba. And I know Carolyn is, and many of you are anxiously awaiting Happy Bucks, so I must say that as well. So you know that Shakiba and I do not stand in between you and your Happy Bucks this week. She's allowing us plenty of time so that you'll be able to share your Happy Bucks. So the first part of the questions for Shakiba, we're going to cover sort of getting to know her a little bit, and then just talk a little bit with her about leading through this pandemic, what it's like to be a leader. And then we're going to talk a little bit really about the role of the chamber within the community and how that has worked out. And perhaps leading through the pandemic, she'll tell us a little bit about what she signed on for or didn't sign on for. So Shakiba, let me just start before taking on the role of president and CEO of the chamber, you of course were United Way's Director of Community Development. How did this prepare you for the chamber and balancing economic and social well-being of your community?
Thanks, Marva, and thank you to everyone. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to join the group. First and foremost, I have to say congratulations on 100 years. That's an excellent success. 100 years of service is incredible, and I'm hoping that we can get together in person soon to celebrate. That's right, Marva. You know, my background is in community development and in creating social impact. I spent many years participating around planning tables with experts on important local issues such as, you know, child well-being, homelessness, mental health, newcomer well-being, and that kind of thing. I see a fellow social impactor on the line, Chris Willard from the Community Foundation. So we work closely together on monitoring those needs and finding ways to invest to meet those needs in our community. So as a part of that role, for many years, I worked alongside businesses who corporately and through their employees are donors for these important issues. And what happened was I realized I wanted to get a better sense to know the quote unquote business world better. And that's when I joined the board at the Guelph Chamber. and was really provided with some fascinating insight into what felt like a different world than what I was used to. But what happened was, is I learned quickly that strong networks of business are economic drivers. And with that in mind, obviously, I recognize that business well-being is community well-being. And as you all know, behind every business are the people and their families. So that transition and that transferable skill idea was top of mind when I joined the chamber.
Thanks, Shakiba. As we prepared for this interview, you were sharing why it was important for you to meet Rotarians, whether virtually or otherwise. And you not only accepted being a guest of ours to speak once, but twice. You were set, and my co-chair for program, Murray, got in touch with you, and you said yes. And of course, COVID came along and we had to cancel that. And then when Murray reached out to you again without hesitation, you said yes. I think you had about a week and a half or 2 weeks notice. Why is this so important for you to be here and speaking with us and meeting fellow Rotarians, albeit virtually? What is the connection there?
Well, the truth of the matter is, like you mentioned in my bio, that, you know, Guelph is my hometown. I always say kindergarten right through university. And I'm familiar, of course, with Rotary and from years of attending festivals, events, and gatherings, and benefiting from the fundraising that's occurred. Rotary, of course, however, is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and my priority right now is giving members my time and learning about them and hearing from them, their struggles and their successes. So honestly, it's my pleasure, like I said, to be joining you and so many esteemed community members.
Thanks, Shakiba. Very, very interesting. I'm going to go further back a little bit. I've known your mom for a long time as a community builder, and she has served another connection to share with you, and other Rotarians will be happy to know this as well. Shakiba's mom has been sort of a mainstay at Shelldale for many, many years. She's taking some time away right now, but Rotary has invested heavily in Shelldale. It's very close to us, and a former Rotarian, the late Charlie Whitaker, was one of those key Rotarians in connecting us with Shelldale and continuing that connection. So we're very happy about that. How has this helped to shape your own service and career path, the work that your mom has done and all the other works that you have done? Can you delve into that a little bit more, your connection with certainly United Way and those kinds of relationships that you have built and how it's serving you at the Chamber?
Sure, so that's right. For more than 10 years, my mom, Mitra, has worked at Shelldale. Many of you know it as Better Beginnings, Better Futures, and now Shelldale Family Gateway. And so firstly, what I want to say about that is that I think that this question and comment is the perfect example of why I love Guelph, and Guelph is amazing. Like you said, you met my mom so many years ago and have been a wonderful friend and advocate alongside her for the community. And so it really feels like today's a full circle moment where, you know, we're really closing that loop on the experience, and having you interview me for this with the Rotary is just perfect. So I just have to say that. I grew up myself near the Shelldale neighborhood with a single mom of two who reminded my brother and I how important being connected to community and giving back was, and because it certainly helped us as a family as well. And so she made sure volunteering was a key part of our regular extracurricular activities, whether or not we liked it. She took us to vote every single time, and she made all of those experiences really positive for us. And at the end of the day, it's those experiences in my childhood and the benefits that I was provided because of the community coming together to support organizations and camps and schools. And that's why, you know, I ended up pursuing public policy and political science in school, community development in my postgraduate work, and it's why I never hesitated to think that this is where I wanted to end up, where I wanted to work, and where I wanted to create strong community was in my own backyard.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Shakiba. In your bio, it says that you came to Canada as a little girl, as a refugee. What was that like settling in Guelph as a refugee? And we'll just touch on that ever so briefly because I think Rotarians want to hear about that, want to know more about you. You brought tears to my eyes because what you're sharing is what community is. And certainly the work that Rotary does in how it helps to build community, not only locally, but internationally, you just encapsulates that quite beautifully. So what was it like settling in Guelph as a refugee? Do you remember back when you were a little girl and what that was like?
You know, I don't remember a lot about it. My family left Iran when I was under a year old, having gone to Turkey and then came to Canada as permanent residents or at the time. And I was 4 years old when we were in Canada. So I don't have a lot of memories about the experience, but I do specifically know, and my mom made a good point to always remind us about what it took to build the family that we are now and the individuals that my brother and I are now. And it was the community, it was the friendships, it was the schools, the school boards, the teachers, the community and neighborhood group program providers that really built us as a community and as a family. So I know that it was positive for us because of the mobilization that folks did when we were here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shakiba. So let's talk a little bit now about your role at the Chamber and leading during a pandemic. It's certainly not what you may have signed up for. And I know I was sharing with you on our chat prior, it was like baptism by fire, if I could just use that term. When you took on the role, I imagine that you were looking at strategic plans and budgets and member retention and recruitment, engagement, all of those things at the top of your list, and especially being an engaged board member, and I met you as a board member as well. We've had conversations as a board member, with you as a board member. And I know that that was important to you, that the Chamber was strong and that it was serving the breadth of the community. How has this pandemic, a few short months after you took over leading your team, how are you serving your members and how are you managing through? What are some of your challenges? What are some of the opportunities? And perhaps some of the stories that you're finding in your leadership through this process?
Sure. That's a great question. And yes, you're right. We did connect. You facilitate a wonderful board session while I was on it. And I joke now a little bit that I was probably too overly engaged around the board table. And so when the opportunity presented itself, it was really nice to hear and receive support to apply for the role and roll up my sleeves. And so I have to say the experience has certainly sharpened the incline of my learning curve. It's been a hectic couple of months for sure. And you know, the truth is, though, I'm actually quite grateful for it. It's really forced the organization to be deliberate about our activities. You know, our communications and our programming had to focus its attention on the current pressing issues. And for the first time in a long time, the issues are actually relatively similar for our entire membership base. And then as far as leading the team, I mean, that experience has mostly felt the same. We are all working virtually, so certainly some adjustments there with all the Zooming that we're doing. But more than ever, you know, being compassionate and allowing team members to have agency for their own tasks has been really key. You know, I give the team full kudos. They adapted really well, and because of them, you know, we were really able to meet the emerging crisis and state that we were in. You know, we were helping individual businesses address their unique challenges through phone calls and emails. We're still making our way through our entire membership list, making phone calls, asking how each business is doing and pointing them in the direction of our resources, the resources we're maintaining and providing them. There's been some really positive exchanges that I wanted to mention. You know, as much as we've heard a lot of struggling stories and hard, difficult stories from businesses, we also saw some excellent positive exchanges between our members. You know, we connected PPE, protective equipment from non-essential business members to the hospital and frontline healthcare providers. We regularly gather and promote good news stories from our members, such as partnerships I'm sure you're familiar with, like the one between the Children's Foundation and Market Fresh, where they're providing fresh food to local at-risk families. And then also highlighting and promoting businesses like Dixon's or Spring Mill Distilleries, who've started creating hand sanitizer because they can and wanted to give back. Or the way, our manufacturers have pivoted their lines to create PPE and medical supplies. So there's been some really positive stories out of this as well. And now we're focused on continuing to pivot our activities to meet members where they're at. Our strategic plan is still certainly in place and guiding our work. Our goals remain the same. We advocate, connect, and convene on behalf of our members to increase and improve and foster economic prosperity. We're just rejigging how we do that.
What has it been like with fellow, I'm going to say, other chambers across the country? Can you give us a snapshot of some of what you're hearing from them and how you collaborate with them?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question, and an important one, because that really is one of the value adds of a local chamber, is our connection directly to a network of chambers across the province and the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. So a really excellent advocacy and authority on business is our provincial counterpart, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. So when you're a member of the chamber in Guelph, you are actually a member of the Ontario Chamber, and then further, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. So we're really lucky to be a part of that network. So a lot of excellent advocacy work happens there, and we connect regularly. So it's really nice to have peers who are facing the same struggles and working together, connecting to learn from one another and to support each other to make sure that no one's duplicating efforts or having a hard time. So it's a really supportive experience. And we're learning that a lot of the struggles are the same, and that folks are really willing to be collaborative, and partnerships are really strong and key right now in being successful. So we're doing well. There's a lot of communities that are harder hit depending on the sectors that they have and the community sizes and social supports that exist or don't exist. Guelph is really lucky. Again, I'm very grateful to be in this city, but there's a lot of confidence provincially and nationally that we're going to get through this and we'll be well again.
That's awesome. Now Lloyd is on the line, so that's pretty good that Lloyd is in this meeting. I'm putting you on the spot now. This is not one of the questions that I sent you, and I'm putting Lloyd on the spot too. But if you had one thing to say to Lloyd around the chamber and the advocacy that's happening, and I know that Lloyd is really very much engaged and was formerly in your role at the chamber, so it's very cool having you both here. What would the message be to Lloyd and vice versa?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I have to say you're right. Having Lloyd, so connected and passionate, dedicated to our community, it has been integral, just generally. I'm fortunate enough to have started just a few weeks prior to Lloyd being in the building at the Guelph Chamber. So it's been an absolute treat to be able to just run downstairs and ask a question and for feedback. And Lloyd's really been a champion of our organization and of the community. But I'm never afraid to challenge Lloyd and challenge our politicians generally and those in power. I think one of the biggest difficulties has been, and Lloyd's heard this directly from the business community, is that the incremental program delivery models in relief have been problematic. We have a lot of businesses that fall through cracks and are still struggling and are having a hard time, figuring out how to access supports and keep business stores open. And so I continue to challenge Lloyd to ensure that relief programs are bold, not incremental, and if there's opportunities to create a stronger litmus test of eligibility and who to include and how to be more inclusive, that's the message that I send, and I do send it regularly. we speak almost daily, so he has no ability to get away from it at this point.
So I'm going to have Lloyd maybe tell Carolyn for Lloyd to have the first question in the Q&A in
Sure.
response to what you just said. Is that okay, Lloyd? Since I put you on the spot, it's only fair, right?
Well, of course. And Shakiba, it's so good to have Shakiba in the Zoom and in her position. It's been a pleasure working together, and it's no surprise for me. I worked with Shakiba when I was at the Chamber and she was at the United Way as one of our key connectors into vulnerable people in Guelph. And maybe that's where my question will come from, is as we're developing these programs and reaching out through the Chamber of Commerce and other community groups to try and support the vulnerable people, I have a concern that we may be opening up the economy too early and that people that are vulnerable are going to be even in a worse position. So maybe the question is how we work together to try to protect people's health and balance the economic recovery, which I know a lot of your business members would like us to go faster than slower, but maybe a comment on the balance between personal health, protecting workers, and at the same time opening up our economy again.
So I'll hold that tough question for wrap up. Did I open up what did I open up? No, I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Really good, robust conversation and discussion afterwards. So what I wouldn't mind asking you now, Shakiba, for some of your final thoughts, and your final thoughts could include what Lloyd just mentioned, some things to share with our Rotarians. Certainly you mentioned earlier that we are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and there are opportunities for us, for our members to be engaged and vice versa. You mentioned as well about webinars and other information. Can you, in your wrap up, also share a little bit about how we as Rotarians can leverage the Chamber?
For sure. So again, I first want to thank you for having me, to Murray for being in touch and being persistent. And I'm so glad to have joined you. And I hope that there are opportunities in the future to connect, not only with the Rotary as a whole, but everyone who's tuned in today individually as well. And again, congratulations on the 100 years of service. Rotary, like Marva mentioned and I mentioned, is a member of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. And because of that, all of you have the ability to engage with our content, access our programming at member rates. I really encourage you all to check out our website, guelphchamber.com, and share the resources out to your own networks. We would certainly appreciate that. If you're unsure of how to stay in touch, you can subscribe to our e-newsletter that's sent out twice a month, and we're always recapping what's available, what we're doing, and how to engage. And, on the advocacy side of things, we're working closely with the Mayor's Economic Recovery Task Force, and we're hosting town halls with all 3 levels of government. I'm helping moderate some consultations between our elected officials and industry leaders. Of course, working closely with MP Longfield and also MPP Schreiner and our mayor, Cam Guthrie. So all of that's been a really wonderful experience, and I do give them kudos for working so well together. We have webinars, like Marva mentioned, and so we've pivoted a lot of our in-person programming to virtual, and it really ranges from really casual networking opportunities to just tune in. We're calling them 9 at 9s, often on Wednesday mornings at 9, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis. We have 9 folks join us, and we connect and touch base. People are able to speak on their business and their personal well-being, and it's just a nice way to have people see other people. And we also have some webinars that are really educational and support businesses. So we have a webinar next week on Friday about how to get your business onto an e-commerce platform, so how to bring your business sales online. We have another webinar about how to return to work safely. That includes a panelist from public health right here from Guelph. And we have some medium and long-term thinking type learning sessions, including an upcoming one about nimble leadership with Rebecca Southerns. So this is really focused on helping businesses learn about how to lead strategically out of this crisis. So a really wide spectrum of engaging content, advocacy work, and opportunities to connect with other network members to see how they're faring as well. So again, thank you for having me, and please do be in touch. Our whole team is available, but you can, literally email me, shakiba@guelphchamber.com at any point if you have questions or resources or feedback to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Shakiba. And we really would love to also connect the Chamber of Commerce with certainly our 100th celebration, along with our Rotary Response campaign. And we want to share that information with you, and we'd love for that to be shared with your membership as well. So we have Justin on the line, and Justin Funk, of course, is our marketing chair, and we'll get some information out to you so that your members will also learn a little bit about some of what we are doing. And we are recording this as well, so we're very excited about that. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate that you've taken the time to speak with us, for us to get to know you a little bit better. You are so inspiring and breaking some incredible, I'm going to say, glass ceilings as well. And I can tell you that around the community, in sitting at different tables, your name often comes up as someone, even prior to you moving into this role, that needs to be at the table because you really know your stuff. So congratulations, and continued success with the Chamber, and continued success in the challenges and the opportunities that is just set out there for you. So what I will do now is turn the meeting over to Carolyn, who will facilitate our Q&A, and we will work to manage. So we're asking folks again to pop onto chat. Just look below at the bottom of your screen. There's a ribbon right across and it says chat. Click on that. It'll say to everyone, just type in your question there, put a question mark beside it so we can differentiate between that and a comment. And we will read that for you. And for those who can't access that or find it a little bit challenging, feel free to put your hand up. We want to make sure that we're hearing from as many people as possible. And once again, welcome to our special guests. You are also invited to ask questions. We appreciate that, especially those who are proposed Rotarians. Over to you, Carolyn.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to extend my gratitude to you as well, Shakiba. Thank you for sharing your insights, your stories, your past and your present experiences, and your great personality as well, and intellect with us. So thank you. One thing I've noticed in the comments is a lot of people saying she should be a member of our club, and
I've already asked.
and Lloyd said, lock the doors before she gets out.
I love that. I appreciate that request. I'd certainly be pleased to talk further about that. I have to say the virtual, especially, opportunity is certainly convenient. So I appreciate the ask, and I'd be honored to join.
Well, we'd love to have you. And almost all the past presidents of the Guelph Chamber have been members of our club, just as an FYI. So you'd be in good company with many. I'm going to turn it to Lloyd first, and if he can re-ask his question that you may have forgotten. So go ahead, Lloyd.
So thank you, and sorry I misunderstood the directions for me, but again, great to have you here, Shakiba. I know we have been talking about the balance between public safety, the health of individuals going back to work, and the need to reopen our economy. So maybe if you could address that and how the Chamber is looking at that.
Sure, thanks, Lloyd. Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, I will reiterate what most chambers are saying, and community members and leaders are saying, which is that the health and safety of our workforce and our community at large is #1 priority, and that has to be key. And it's actually possible to maintain safe health practices and talk about economic recovery. It's not a one or the other. It's certainly an and conversation. So really happy to see from the provincial government a structured path forward. I agree, Lloyd, with your commentary, though, that it's a fine line, and it will require multifaceted levels of communication and support to actually do successfully. So I know I've always been really hesitant to suggest to our membership to just open things up just with some of the limited guidelines in place, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure there's clear articulation of how to do that safely to maintain public safety. So it's both. I ask every member to reflect. I think, is it Louisa that was on the call earlier wondering about, taking on only appointments, and I think that's a great question. You certainly can. It's about making sure you're keeping health and safety precautions in mind as made available by public health. So there's guidelines in place for the types of businesses that are able to reopen, and there's simply some common sense factors around using gloves, around having sanitization, and maintaining, key here, maintaining physical distancing still is a priority. So just making sure that we strike that balance, and it's possible. And as an example, we know that this is a priority for our members. So we've put on a webinar about how to open business safely. That's at the end of the month. And we're also working with some private sector and public sector folks around coordinating PPE purchases for business. So we know buying power is limited when you're a small business, an entrepreneur, solopreneur. And so we're going to find ways to centralize that ability to make sure that businesses have access to those protective equipment.
Thank you so much. And we have another question from Hal. Hal, I've unmuted you. You can go ahead.
Okay, Shakiba, it's so great to see you again.
Hi, Hal. This is another perfect example of Guelph and how small town it is. Hal was my chess instructor when I was in elementary school. So nice to see you.
Yes, indeed. So I just wondered if chess has stayed with you. Have you taken any life lessons from this great game?
Yeah, I have to say yes. Chess, it has an extracurricular activity. Was the first thing that had me excited about how, thinking strategically, about working independently, and having fun while doing it. So yeah, I still love chess. I don't play enough anymore, but my mom certainly has too many of my medals up in her house.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Terrific, thank you. And we have a question from Anne McKay as well. Anne, go ahead.
Hi, Shakiba. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I think, like lots of people in the community, I wonder about how can we support local business. I think about buying gift certificates at restaurants or at stores to use later, and or ordering food from restaurants. Are there some other things that would be really meaningful for your members? And yeah, any advice you would give us as how we keep the money in the community in thoughtful ways?
And nice to see you. That's a great question, and you hit the nail on a few options already. So certainly buying local is key, and that's why we're working with many businesses who don't have that capacity right now to make their products or services available online, on getting them online to do so. And we're actually working with the task force to find a way to actually centralize all of our local businesses on an online platform where it's even easier to sift through and find ways to do that. Buying gift cards now to use later is a great example that you mentioned, and just even supporting the messages that come out of businesses. So if you have any social media, just putting, retweeting, resharing the messages coming out of businesses is really actually important. It keeps their name and their brand out there, and it just shows the compassion and support they deserve right now. And then if you're really keen, advocate, write to your members of parliament, provincially, federally, to your mayor, on the issues that you think would make a difference for businesses. So advocating for, relief programs that are accessible, advocating for improving, perhaps decreasing the cost of PPE implementation and supporting business. So anything you could do to do that is wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
So we have time for a few more questions. Just put your hand up if you have a question for Shakiba. I'm scrolling through all of you.
I see Helmut. Caroline?
All right, Helmut, go ahead.
question is really a mental health question. And this morning, CBC Radio interviewed Clara Hughes, our Olympian of note, Canadian Olympian of note, and she spoke about hiking in the outdoors and what she received, how she gained from being out in the open. And here in this area, we have the GRCA who has refused to open up its trails and for people. Now I'm okay personally because we have ways of getting around this lockdown of GRCA trails, where people need to get out into the open and commune with nature, to see the trilliums blooming, to see the jack-in-the-pulpits blooming, and walking the streets, it just doesn't cut it. I think people need to be out and enjoying nature and communing with nature. Is there any way that the Chamber can help GRCA open up their trails?
That's a great question. And I certainly reiterate the feeling that being outdoors, being in that kind of setting is so good for your mental health. Getting fresh air, exercising is really important. I know I personally take advantage of that as a way to stay sane and to stay grounded. I know the GRCA is actually actively working to find ways to open up. I would reiterate the comment that if they are seeing it to be troubling as an issue of public safety, I have to listen to that first and foremost, because if there's concerns about maintaining well-being on those trails right now, then I appreciate why they may not be opening. There are some private trails and parks generally in the city that are open for use, so not on the facilities themselves, but to walk through the park is available. But I know that it's up and coming, so I suspect the GRCA will be opening up sooner rather than later. I think there's just several factors in mind, both about keeping the community safe and also their employees safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Shakiba? Put your hand up.
Mahmoud?
Go ahead, Mahmoud.
Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so yesterday, the Lang School of Business had a webinar, and Shakiba was one of the presenters there. And I asked a question about the percentage of jobs and the kind of jobs that can be done from home. There are lots of people who cannot do their jobs from home, and I'm wondering if you can comment on, you know, there are lots of businesses who would want to survive, of course, but the jobs can't be done from home until they open. And I'm just wondering about the type and the percentage of these jobs.
Sure, and Mahmoud, it's nice to put a face to the name. Yes, I was moderating the Lang, the Lang series of webinar series that we've put on, and we were talking about returning safely to work, and we had some expert panelists speaking to that. I believe we heard that close to 40% of businesses nationally or perhaps globally are unable to work from home, just purely based on the work that they do. If it's factory work, line work, you know, anything that requires not just our brains and our ability to type. That there's, you know, about 40% of business, and that's the case. Those are the businesses that the government has in mind and has included in the phased opening approach. So there's quite an extensive list of who that is, when they can open, and what they need to consider before opening. So we're really mindful of that. We have many of those industries and sectors here in Guelph, and many of whom actually continued to work even throughout this entire 8 to 10 week period because of their essential status. So the government's worked really closely with them and through us to support them, making sure they're keeping their employees safe and keeping their businesses open.
Thank you. And we have one last question, and this is from Faith. Go ahead, Faith.
Hey, Carolyn, I think that may be Roger.
Oh, Roger, sorry.
I'm using my wife's computer.
Yeah. I just saw it on chat. Go ahead, Rob.
Shakiba, with the university potentially delivering all courses this fall online, it could mean that there's going to be a significant number of students actually not move to Guelph, but stay home for a whole bunch of reasons. And that could have a significant impact because, 8,000 students or whatever the number is a huge economic generator for our city. Any comments? Is that a concern, or do you think they'll still come?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, it is a concern, and it's at the table around the mayor's task force. Students are an economic driver in our city. We're lucky to have the University of Guelph. And you're right, if they're unable to move in, it has implications for the institution and for our community. So I don't have a lot of details on what's being discussed at this point, but it's on the table, and we're talking, we're working closely with administration and our municipality and our government officials on how to do that. I believe our Prime Minister made an announcement specifically about universities. Lloyd, I don't know if you could, I missed the announcement this morning, but I know that the governments are keeping that in mind and are finding ways to support the institutions through this fall. And also the University of Guelph specifically, I know, is thinking about creative ways in finding ways to support students to be local. And all of those should be coming out over the next coming weeks. Lloyd, anything about the Prime Minister's announcement?
Yeah, I missed the announcement, but there was an announcement today about students getting support, that they can now apply online to get financial support from the federal government to help with their tuition costs. I have spoken also with the university, with Franco Vaccarino, around their plans and what percentage of students might be coming back to Guelph. So it is definitely a concern to try to make sure they continue their studies, but also, as you pointed out, Roger, if the university isn't doing well, Guelph is not doing well. So it's really important that we find ways to support the university through this as well, and the students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Excellent questions, everyone. I did catch a little bit of the Prime Minister's update this morning. And one thing that he talked about on top of what Lloyd said is that there's going to be some money for research, which is so well needed. And so university research is unbiased, and we need that kind of support. So wonderful. Well, Shakiba, thank you so much for joining us today. And as a small token of our gratitude, we have inoculated 100 children against polio in your name.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Applause, applause.
You're welcome, everybody. Yay!
Here's your reactions.